Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am here to talk about all things breath. Well, actually not all things, not even remotely close to all things, because we would be here for a month if I was to talk about all things breath. But just a couple of little things. We are just exploring breath, and the idea that I want us to think about today is breath as a three-dimensional movement. Because why? As yoga teachers, we often say, we think about abdominal breath. Place your hand on your belly and you can feel the belly rise and fall as we are breathing. Sometimes we get kind of fancy pants and we do three-phase breath. So we have the belly, and then we might feel the ribs, and then we might feel the upper chest. Three-phase breath. We can then go into fancy pants breath, Ujjayi breath, buzzy bee breath, etc., etc., etc. But we are always talking to our students from the point of view of the front of the body. And they are also placing their hands, should they be placing their hands, always on the front of the body. And we are just frontist. Just by definition, we're kind of frontist. We kind of think of it in terms of the front of the body. So today I want us to just really consider the fact that we are three-dimensional and we move in space in three dimensions. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. However, because we don't see it and we become unaware of it, sometimes the movement in the rest of the body does atrophy a little bit. And so what is the movement that is involved in breath? What is this three-dimensional movement that I speak of? So, as we inhale, and we all know that as we take a breath in, let me take a breath in. Breath into the balloon, the lungs expand. Now we can look at and we all know probably about the intercostal muscles, about the diaphragm, how the diaphragm will come down. So the diaphragm contracts because it's up here. It contracts and it comes down, which increases the volume of the thoracic cavity. Hopefully also our external intercostal muscles are also hopefully contracting, and by contracting they're expanding the size of the rib cage, hopefully. Potentially there's muscles happening up here, but we really want these to be our secondary muscles. But we are expanding the size, the volume of our thoracic cavity. When we exhale, we surrender, we let go, we release that space. And as we release it, the air just pops out or the air is sucked in, depending on whether we have made a bigger space or a smaller space. Now, here's what's really interesting. If we are working with our body in the way the body's meant to be, our ribs will expand out like this and close in like this, expanding out and closing in. But if they atrophy, then they won't move so much. There'll be a little bit of movement, but most of the movement will just really be down into the diaphragm and therefore having this abdominal effect, with a lot less happening here in the ribs area. So it is beneficial for us to get our students to actually develop the movement mobility back into this area. One of the ways we often would do that is by placing our hands on it so we get this sensory feedback. On the exhale, let everything relax, the breath leaves, but then continue that movement by contracting these deeper muscles, and so bringing the chest cavity smaller. Releasing that, the chest expands, and then if you want to continue that expansion, you can actually then contract the external intercostal muscles, and so the chest expands even more. Release that to neutral and continue the compression. I call it like a big bear hug, because it feels like you're giving yourself a big bear hug. And then gradually over time, you'll feel the movement, the mobility in these muscles between our ribs expanding. And then hopefully it'll get to a point that I can even feel it under my arms as I'm standing. As I breathe in, I can feel the whole chest, the whole rib cage is all expanding. But what's really interesting is it's three-dimensional. We think of it, we don't really think of what's happening in the back and how the shoulder blades and the back ribs get involved in that breathing. And if we kind of exaggerate it for ourselves, if we take a breath in, you can exaggerate expanding the arms, almost curling the shoulders, letting that breath in, and exhaling, letting it out. Now, you might be looking at me going, she's got that wrong. What is she at? Inhaling, exhaling. Why is she doing that? Because what we always do as yoga students is we inhale and we exhale. Inhale, and then exhale, say as we're rolling down. Inhale into a back bend, exhaling into a forward fold. What I want us to though consider is that there is a lot more lung tissue in the back body. The lungs at the front comes to here, the lungs at the back come to about here. So there's a lot more lung tissue, in the back body. So if we want to actually maximize the amount of space, the lung tissues that are expanded, that receive breath in, and we want to create that biggest volume possible, it makes sense to maximize the back body when we're inhaling. Maximize the back body when we're inhaling. What would that look like? That would look like inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Hopefully, if you try that, that will just blow your mind. What I found really interesting is that we always think about ourselves. We're pretty frontist, and we think about movement only in the front of the body, and therefore forget about all the movement that's possible in the back of the body. The other thing that happens is we get into habit. And because we're in the habit of being frontist, this feels like an inhale to us, and this feels like an exhale. For me to suggest to you to switch that around, exhale, inhale. It's very tricky because we are in such habit. One of the big disadvantages of being in habit isn't that one is wrong or one is right. They are different. But the real problem is if we are stuck in habit, we don't have choice. And if we don't have choice, we don't have agency. We also don't have as much freedom of movement. So that when you're running, you will have a different breath to when you're standing. We'll have a different breath to when you're sleeping. We'll have a different breath to when you're meditating. We'll have a different breath to when you've got a shock, when you are upset, when you want to get into your power to confront somebody. All of these require a different breath. And so just like we want full range of movement in our arm, we want full range of movement and choice of movement in our breath. And so therefore, it's worth blowing your mind a little bit. Have some fun with it. And if you're enjoying this and you want to find out more, you can always train with us, or you can join us at the yoga picnic. We have our own tent where we are going to be playing all day with all this kind of mad, mind-blowing stuff. Join us, visit us, and find out more.